What I'll be talking about today is how modern psychology, brain psychology, is actually a human nature project. And when I mean a human nature project, I mean psychology is trying to delineate the form of a human, the form that every human has. And it's doing this through describing how the brain functions. Modern psychologists aim to ground human nature in a biological substrate, namely the brain. Cognitive psychology, the study of higher thought, although it is rarely explicitly acknowledged, is a human nature project. It aims to create a model of the normal human mind-brain. Its method is piecing together experimental evidence of a wide set of abilities that every human possesses. Early evidence in favor of this approach is neuroscientists' successful mapping of a coherent and species-wide anatomical model of the human brain. The logical step towards the question of human nature is that the main characteristic all humans share is the mind, or possession of a mind. Cognitive psychologists claim to be demonstrating that the mind's abilities are caused by or grounded in a universally shared biological substrate, the brain. In my talk today, I will discuss this brain grounding of human nature, and I also discuss some possible problems facing psychologists when they make this claim. And finally, I will discuss whether or not we want an explanation to human nature. First, I will briefly touch on some of the conceptual issues facing cognitive psychology. As I mentioned earlier, cognitive psychology purports to describe human nature as a set of abilities grounded in the brain. One of the problems for this approach is making a decision as to how general or specific an ability is. For example, peripheral vision is a general ability, whereas seeing a 3D hologram is a specific ability. Where along this continuum of abilities should psychologists set their aims? To put this into perspective, consider, if psychologists aim to delineate a human nature, then at the level of abilities we must find a common ground across all cultural and historical differences. This is a very hard and possibly irresolvable task, since a sufficient explanation of human nature must take place at a level prior to cultural factors, if this is possible at all. So for example, a 3D hologram is something that's not very widely available, it's something that was recently created, and so viewing them cannot be considered as a species-wide ability. We have learned from 100 years of intellectual thought that transhistorical and transcultural entities at the level of specific abilities and behaviors are very hard to demonstrate. That is why I, along with many other psychologists, suggest that cognitive psychology should refine the level at which it aims to search for human nature towards cellular and chemical processes that function prior to these contentious levels of cross-cultural difference. For example, I share with, let's say, a Japanese person from 1680, more or less the same set of brain chemicals. We are obviously different in so many ways, but at the level of genome and neural structure, we are more or less the same. Jacques Panksepp, the founder of the field of affective neuroscience, suggests that there are a number of low-level general abilities that are shared across all mammals. They are the following. So this is something that all mammals have the neural architecture to do. Lust, everyone knows that. Play, fear, seeking, rage, care, and panic. These abilities are biologically grounded in a complex framework of chemical and neural systems. He has been investigating these systems for over 20 years with great success. These basic abilities can be thought of as shared across all people, but manifested differently depending on the cultural circumstances. It is these microscopic systems, rather than the specific abilities, 3D, holograms, peripheral vision, that many psychologists study. It is these microscopic systems that are the necessary, that are necessary themselves for possession of the human form of the mind, which would be human nature. Furthermore, to separate human nature from the nature of other animals, there is a growing body of evidence which suggests that particular structures in the frontal lobe of the brain make possible our unique personality and self-reflective capabilities. Cognitive psychology claims it is possible to ground the human nature in neurochemistry and biology because this is a level of reality that we can study pre-theoretically. Biology is thought to be a brute reality prior to cultural factors. As I put forward this view, I understand that, like previous human nature projects, for example, Sigmund Freud's attempt to explain the structure and functioning of the human mind, there is a problem of reification. Reification is a simplification of reality into things or concepts that may not be real. I will now delineate the four major reifications I see in this psychological project. The first one is using the model of evolution, specifically the idea that the mind was designed for biological purposes based on what is most beneficial for survival of the organism and its genes. The second reification